fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Okay, thanks for joining us back at the House of Mystery. And today we are continuing our conversations with authors that have contributed to the Larceny and Last Chances Anthology. It's a book of 22 stories of mystery and suspense. It's a Superior Shores Anthology, book number 4. So today, welcome Gregory Meece. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
So, Gregory, how did you get into this anthology? How did you get brought into this?
Well, I guess the short answer is luck. I try to stay tuned into publishing opportunities, particularly for short mystery fiction, whether it's magazines, journals, anthologies, whatever. I've had some good luck this past couple of years with anthologies. And when I saw this one advertised as open submissions for Larceny and Last Chances, of course, the wheels began to spin, thinking of what I could write about that would fit that description.
Gregory, your story, Once a Thief. So what's the premise behind that?
Based on, I figured this would be a little different than the other submissions because this was not your traditional crime story. This involves a young girl named Gemma Garcia, who is afflicted with kleptomania. It starts out with Gemma's school having a disciplinary review hearing because this is her third strike for stealing things, even though it turns out the things that were stolen were of very little value, monetarily or for any other reason. And the parents of the girl defend her, saying, she can't help this. This is kleptomania. But the school has its rules. It's a private school, and they have their reputation to uphold. So, she does not fare well since it was her third violation. From then, she moves to a job. Of course, now she has no high school degree. She gets a job in a cleaning service as a house cleaner. She's about to be fired there as well because of incidents where things have gone missing, even though they were, again, not of any significant value, until she's sent to a man's house because all the other cleaning personnel were unavailable. So they had to send Gemma. As it turns out, during her stint in this house, a man is murdered. Subsequently, all the evidence points to Gemma. The case ends up in court where her defense is, I never killed the man. I did steal the item that incriminated me, but only because it's what I do. And it has an ending that is, I think Judy, the editor, liked the ending, which had a little bit of excitement to it.
So did you start this as a storyline? Was it a story or a theme, or did you have the character first and then you put her into the situation?
Well, like Christina, I worked in schools. I worked for 40 years in education, most of that time as an administrator, where I supervised disciplinary hearings, such as the one that this story opens up with. I didn't know a young girl who came before me once for a similar infraction. That was the basis for my story. I just thought it was an interesting twist on the traditional mystery crime fiction story, in that this girl who was committing crimes should be accused of something she didn't do, but once a thief, you're labeled. It's a hard thing to overcome. But it was based on an actual experience I had in the school.
How was the transition from academic writing to popular fiction? What was your experience?
Well, my 4 decades in education interrupted my creative writing career. In high school, I took my first course in creative writing, and I wrote things for the high school literary magazine. And I loved it so much, I told my English teacher I wished I could take more English courses. It was in my senior year, and I'd used all the credits in English that I was required to take, and they didn't really have anything else. And she said, well, how would you like to write a novel? And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, we can do it as an independent study. You would meet with me once a week for 45 minutes, and I'd expect 10 pages a week. and at the end, we'll have a novel. So I was all into creative writing of poetry, short stories, novels, whatever. And then I continued that in college and took more creative writing courses. And then once I started work, I just didn't have time. So all my writing tended to be business writing, which was creative in many cases because I wrote grant proposals and a lot of public relations and marketing materials for the school. And I still loved writing, but it just wasn't fiction. I ended up putting out maybe 12 different newsletters at one time just because I loved writing, and I was flooding the school market with publications and all kinds of things I would write. And people said, this is really well written, but it wasn't fiction. It wasn't until I retired a few years ago, like 2020, that I started writing again after a 40-year lapse and submitting things for publication.
Is there a subtext or a meaning behind this short story? I always think of things like Twilight Zone when you do short stories, and I always think about a quick meaning or subtext. So, Gregory, do you have that in this? Is there something that you want people to get?
Yeah, I think the title basically came from my mentor in education. Told me he was always particularly hard in disciplinary matters for students on the subject of theft. And I said, why theft? As opposed to, a school fight or plagiarism or, any of the number of infractions you can do in school. And he said, and I always remembered, because if they were a thief, they'll do it again. When I was my own head of school, in my own head of school position in my own school, this student came to me with these repeated acts of theft. And I realized that this was not something malicious, and this was not something she was guilty of. This was a medical type of problem, a mental problem that was causing her to take these things. And I let her go and said, you're one of my nicest students. You shouldn't be here. In the story, it turns out differently because most people, I think, would not see beyond the rules. So I guess the subtext or message of this story is sometimes you need to look beyond the rules and look at the person.
With the stories and with the anthology now, do you have social media? Do you like to interact with readers and people that might pick up the anthology or anything that you do?
My newly created webpage, which is hot off the press, is meecetales.com. It's Tales, not Tail. So meecetales.com, and then I'm also on X at GRM Senior. Promoting myself is not my thing, and I often feel silly about it. It just isn't what we're trained to do. Right. Try to be humble about it. But I do want not only other readers to read my work. That's one. It's not a complete story until people have read it. I'd love for them to provide feedback on the stories, but also I want editors to see what I've written and to, kind of, maybe take a second look at the story I might be submitting to them. And then finally, it's just validation for me to see my name in print, post a picture of the book cover, like Larceny Last Chances on my webpage. It's gotten some great reviews, so I can quote those reviews. It's very fulfilling to be part of that process.
Fantastic. Now, of course, we'll have both your websites, and of course the book is up and it's available now. So we thank you for being here. So Gregory Meece, thanks.
Thank you, Al.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.